So this is video 2, and I made a mistake when I was cutting it out, so I've corrected that, and now both fronts are now large. That's my sleeve, and that's been sorted as you've seen before. That's the other sleeve. They're right. This is the back, and that's a large. This pattern comes out a lot bigger, so I've cut it down a size smaller than what I need. So because I put these on originally, the patchwork pockets, on the extra large size, and I cut it off, I had to cut the patchwork pockets down. So keep that in mind where your placement is, and the size that you need your patchwork pockets to be. Plenty big enough. So now we can actually start sewing, and we do the shoulder seams to the back. As you can see, that has now been sewn together, and there's the other one pulled down. So you can see that's the front onto the back, and that's what, because it's 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and obviously you're going to have that really thick. Now I've got a decision to make. Once that's sewn correctly and I've done my 5/8 of an inch, I can do what I want with this. Now I can either cut it down, I think I will bind it. I don't particularly want a raw edge like that, but I could cut that down and make it smaller, or leave it that size. I think I'll make it smaller and bind it, because that might be a bit too bulky on the shoulders, as I'm not going to press it out. Now I could make the decision of pressing it out that way and binding each side. That might be a possibility. Let's see what choice I make as we go along. Right, for this binding I've decided to open the seam so it's flat, so that when I put anything else either at the front or the sleeves, it's not going to be too bulky. At the moment I've done what I would do on a quilt, and that's 2.5 inch binding, and pressed it in half, and then put it on one side and flattened out the seam, so I'm only sewing one seam at a time. So that's what it looks like from the back. So we'll sew that side in, and then I'll probably hand sew it to the other side. So yes, this is not a slow progress if you're using binding. You could sew it, but I usually hand bind mine when after the first sew. Let's see what this looks like. This is what the first one looks like when it's sewn on. That's there. I've sewn it on one side so far, like that. And then obviously then you bring it over and then pin it this side. And there's no need to finish the ends, because the ends are going to be sewn into another part, either the sleeve or somewhere, or the front band. So once you've hand sewn that, that's what the first one will look like. And it's a lot thinner than doing them both together, which then makes, when you flatten them out in the seam, should make that a bit easier. So that's what it looks like. I'll have to pull them off. When it's been bound. And then obviously then you have to cut the ends to match the sides going round. But that's the first one. Then obviously you've got to do the other side. And then what I should do probably is just catch that within the seam allowance, 1/4 inch either side, to keep it flat, and give that a quick press, and probably starch that so it stays back. But don't forget, if you've got whatever wadding you've got underneath, you have to press according to your instructions of your wadding, because you don't want that shrinking. So mine's a very cool iron. So there's the two now shoulder seams that have been finished, and I've starched them back, and I've sewn just on the edges just to catch them in and help to keep them flat, when I'm putting the other corresponding sides in. So that's that done. Next move. So that's the sleeve, showing you the right side of this one, and I've done the other side as well, and that's what it looks like from the inside. I'm not going to bind these, and I'm going to leave them as is. That should not fray or anything, but I mean, you could zigzag the edges, you could cut them down if you wanted to. It's entirely up to you what you wish to do. You could even bind them, it's entirely up to you. I'm going to leave those because you're not going to see them like you would on the shoulder seam. I can always bind them after. I don't know what I'm going to do with my shoulder seams, but anyway, both my sleeves have now gone in, sorry, and I've decided not to do anything with these. So the next bit is where we put the sleeve and the sides together. So basically that's the sleeve, this side. So if we turn that over, that's right sides to right sides, and obviously then you go all round down the front, so it comes down the sleeve and then carries on down to the front, putting the back and the front together. Where you didn't sew all of the sleeve right to the very end, you only did it to one of the dots at either end. Then obviously when you sew up here, you stop where, and you obviously have to pin and pull all this away. It should come together where that dot was, and then you sew from the bottom up to the dot, and you sew from the sleeve, from the cuff up the sleeve to the armpit and to the dot this side. And that way then if you do both ends on the dot, then you should join. Because this is thick, I might not get, so I might have to do that bit by hand. Obviously with it not being a normal piece of fabric and we've got wadding and everything in there, we'll see how we go, but that's my next stage. And then what I've decided to do then, once I've sewn this up, then I'll probably bind them both, and this section together and not separate like I did on the shoulders. Right, I now have a sleeve attached and the side sewn up, and that's what it looks like when it's pulled through. And I did all right. There you go. So we've got that far. So the next thing now then for me to do is to sew some binding on here and then hand stitch the other side. Right, this is as far as we've got now, where I have put binding all around the insides, around the sleeve and around the shoulder. But obviously I can't put binding around this because it doesn't actually meet anywhere. It sort of like comes together like that, and you can't sort of like sew it to get it up, just get it on. So I'm quite happy the fact that the majority of it's done on both sides. The next thing I decided to do was I can't actually take the sleeves up a 1/4 of an inch and then a 5/8 inch or whatever to form a hem until I finish it and get it on, to find out how much I wanted to take the sleeves up. So what I decided to do was leave it the length it was as on the pattern, bind it and then turn it up, and that way I've got cuffs, and I just turn it up to where it is, to where it needs to go, which is a good 4 or 5 inches. So that's the sleeves done and all the inside sorted. So the next thing I need to do is put the band on. So we need to pin that on, starting from the middle of the neck at the back, which is there, and then we need to pin it on or clip it on all the way before we sew. So I've sewed the band on this side, the right side to right side, and then turned it over, and then the only way I can see to do it, because it's so thick, was to hand sew it underneath on the other side, and that way nothing shows this side. Now I could now just sew down there, but I'm quite happy once that's been ironed and pressed. I think the band will be fine. So all I've got left to do now is the hem. Everything's straight, everything's sorted, it's all matching. Slightly different to the pattern obviously, because I'm working with thicker and different fabrics, but I think we've made a little jacket. So I'll come back when I've done the bottom. So there's the hem done. So I've sewed it on the front by machine and hand stitched it on the back, and now I'll put it on and we'll see what it looks like. So there it is. This is the finished jacket. So I'll just stand on tiptoe for you. It was never designed to come over, it was always designed just to be like that. There's my patch pockets. I'll just turn around slowly for you so you can have a look at the back. It's like a raglan sleeve where it comes, the top of the sleeve comes down the side of the arm, so it's like a raglan. So there you go, and I bound most of it so it's all neat and tidy, except for the bit that's directly under the underarm, because it doesn't meet properly for me to do that. But there you go. So that's my patchwork jacket. Now I would have preferred to have done this one. So if you've got that one, I think that would be brilliant, but it does come out big. So if you want to make 12 first, before you do the patchwork patchwork coat, because you've got a choice then of either a collar, it's that one, or a hood. But I think that would be ideal for patchwork, but unfortunately I didn't have my size in it, and they're rather expensive. So if you've got that in a size smaller than what you are, I think this is a large instead of an extra large, which is what I usually am, and it's plenty big enough, and if I lose weight it'll still fit me. So there you go, that's patchwork jacket. So yeah, just a lot of hand sewing. I decided not to quilt the front. I wanted that plain, just to be completely different. I've told you at the front of the video what I used. I think a couple of meters of this and a pack of the 42 layer cake for the rest of it. I think it was called Wild Iris. And I haven't got a lot left, so it's rather thirsty, the coat is. So, because obviously I did full lining, as well as sleeves, and as well as so there's 2 meters. So there you go then. So that's my version of a patchwork coat. I don't know when I'll wear it, but I'm quite happy with it. Let's just turn around so you can see the back, and then yeah, I'm quite happy with it. It's an achievement, something I've always wanted to do, and now I have. But I'll find the time to wear it, even if it's just to pop up to the shop and do my shopping in it or something, or you could take the kids to school or whatever. You know, it's not going to be a going out one or a work one. Well, you could wear it to work, it depends what you do, I suppose. Obviously if you choose the pattern I did, and you could think of some way, you can think of some way to fasten it. If you wanted it fastened, you can make it longer by adding extra length to your patterns. You can adjust your patterns to suit yourself, but obviously you can't follow everything because of the thickness of the fabric and what you have to do the lining. But there you go. Well, I hope you've enjoyed these 2 videos. One was sort of like getting it ready and sort of like doing a bit of quilting, and the second one was sort of like doing most of the sewing, a lot of hand sewing with all the binding, 2.5 inch binding, same way as you would do a quilt. First sew it on by machine and then hand bind the reverse. I've enjoyed doing it. It's another string to my bow, like I say I've done. Thank you for joining me, and above all, have fun. Thank you.